Welcome to the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, where you'll hear career-defining advice, powerful social media strategies, unique creative tips, groundbreaking influencer marketing tactics, and more from marketing experts that represent some of the world's leading brands. So grab a drink and join us for this week's episode. I have very exciting news for you all. If you are like me and you are obsessed with insights for social media, you are going to love this update. So, Instagram recently announced this week that they are adding new insights to their back end platform. And so, a little bit background on this: Instagram hasn't always included robust metrics within their platform themselves. When I first started in the social media industry, I had to use third-party platforms to try to pull different analytics to present to clients. So when they started adding more metrics, more insights for consumers to either, review for themselves or present to clients, this was massive. So I love that they are taking it upon themselves to add even more insights and give more consumers more control over the data that they're reviewing. I think this is awesome. So the new metrics being added to Instagram Insights are: number one, accounts engaged. So this will show the total number of accounts that interacted with your content in a given time period. Number two is what is called engaged audience. So this data will provide demographic insights into the users that are engaging with your content, whether they follow your profile or not, including top cities, top countries, top age ranges, and gender. And then third is reached audience. Similar to engaged audience, this will provide demographic information about the people you've reached with your posts in a given time period, including top cities, top countries, top age ranges, and gender. So make sure you guys pay attention to Instagram, look out for these updates. I'm excited, and you should be too. Make sure you are reviewing your analytics on a regular basis because it provides a lot of insight into what is happening with your audience and with your content.
I am so excited about this week's guest. Cassie and I catch up with Angelica Song, Associate Product Marketing Manager at Google, working on projects at YouTube. As a Gen Z graduate entering the job market after finishing both college and her internship virtually, Angelica has a unique perspective on not only her role and responsibilities in tech marketing, but also the best ways to optimize your work from home experience. She's also a well-known TikTok creator and shares some insight on how to balance a full-time job with being a content creator. Listen in for some behind the scenes of working at Google. Hey, Angelica, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have you. But before we do, we have a very important question that we ask all of our guests that join us because it is Marketing Happy Hour. What is in your glass tonight? It can be water, a alcoholic beverage, really anything. But we'd love to hear what you have tonight.
Right now, I have some passion tea left over from Starbucks. I caught it last night,
Yes.
so I put it in a tumbler. So I've been sipping on that all day.
I love that. I have a glass of Prosecco. It's been a long day, but I also have water. Always double fisting. But Erica, what do you have tonight?
I'm sure that you probably know what I'm about to say because I now have said it in almost every single one of our episodes this season, but I have an Onda, which is tequila seltzer that's by Shay Mitchell. It's like her brand of tequila seltzer. It is actually so good. It's so good, and their branding is so great. I'm like dying to have someone from their branding team on our podcast. We'll make it happen.
Wait, what is it called?
It's called Onda, Onda. It's only like 100 calories. There's like I don't actually know if there's sugar in it, but I don't think there's sugar in it. But it's honestly, I don't usually like tequila, so it's very interesting that I like it, but I do. Angelica, you recently started your career at Google, transitioning from an intern into a full-time position. And congratulations on that, by the way. It's super fun to follow along with your journey on social media. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background, what you studied in school, the internship program at Google, and now your current role?
Yeah, so I just graduated UC Berkeley. I studied business and nutritional science, and I was a summer intern as called BOLD APMM, which is Associate Product Marketing Management Intern. And the role is basically a mix between marketing, digital marketing, content strategy, marketing, consulting, strategy. It's a really, really cool role. And I worked last summer remote, and then I got my full-time job offer to come back after I graduated. So I just started my full-time around 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I've been now here, and it's a product marketing position, so you're placed on different products on a rotational basis. So last summer I was on Google Pay, and now I'm on YouTube, which has been really exciting. And that's kind of where I've been. And I started social media a little bit into quarantine, and that's kind of how I met you guys. So it's been really cool to, merge my two passions together.
That's so fun. So, if you don't mind telling us like a little bit about what you do at YouTube.
Yeah. So it really depends. And the APMM role, there's a ton at different tech companies. And so I can't, this is just at least from my personal experience. And even within APMM, there's so many different um, positions and things that you do. But there are people who focus more on products. So this is more traditional, like PMM stuff, which is go to market, campaign, strategy. And then there's also like brand product marketer. So these are people who focus on branded campaigns, brands, and stuff like that. And then there's also growth marketing marketers. And that's kind of what I'm on. I'm a growth product marketing manager. And this is really new to me. Growth is just, I'm still learning, to be really honest. I have never done it before, but it's a lot about lift, internal ads and space and targeting and all those things of how, any tech company or platform can reach its next billion users. So that's what I've been doing. And right now, a lot of it has been how can we utilize the tools already on Google's products to then highlight and feature our campaigns internally. So whether that's boosting more YouTube Premium subscribers or um, getting people to make more shorts, all that kind of stuff is part of the growth initiative.
That is so awesome. Did you always know that you wanted to go with marketing, or was that something you figured out in your internship? What's the background there?
Yeah, so actually, I had no idea growth marketing existed. And although my position is a product marketing management, it's a rotational. So it's really my first rotation. The company actually places me somewhere. So I don't really get too much of a say. I get to definitely put some of my interests, and thankfully, my interests were seen and met. But yeah, I mean, I always knew I wanted to go into marketing, and I had a passion for working in strategy and even consulting. And so working here in tech has kind of been that perfect, uh, you know, like melting pot of all those things.
That is so awesome. You said one word that I feel like gets tossed around kind of in the marketing industry a lot, but I feel like a lot of people, especially that I know, may not be familiar with the term. You use the word lift. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that is and kind of how you guys track that?
Yeah, so me as well don't know too much about it and just threw it out there to flex. So I I think it just means like how we're measuring whatever our goals are, whether it's viewerships or clicks or engagement or all those metrics that I'm sure all of you guys already know, especially if you're listening in. And that lift is measured whether it's like a percentage or like some kind of like what is it? Like almost like deviations, right? Like notches. So I think there's different companies and different products and different campaigns all probably measure lift differently, and they probably have data people or people on the analytics team who determine what those goals should be or what we should be striving for. So that's what I meant by lift, but it's really arbitrary depending on what company.
Sweet. No, I love that. I think that's a term too. Like I said, I don't hear it a lot personally too. So I always like hearing how people kind of define it. And I think you're right. I think it's almost like conversions. People can kind of define what a conversion is to them differently and what types of conversions they're tracking. So
Mm-hmm.
no, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So
Yeah.
working in tech as a part of the Gen Z kind of age group is a really awesome, unique position for you to be in. Do you see yourself kind of as a role model within the Gen Z age group, and what inspired you to share your journey on social, and what has kind of come of that journey so far?
Well, I definitely, did not strive to be a role model, but I really, in the pandemic, a lot of people, we stayed home and I came back from college and TikTok was growing and I've always wanted to do social media. And I told myself once I landed an internship, I'd start social media. So then it was just kind of right timing, right place. And I started sharing my journey and my life. And a lot of people resonated, I think, and this is not a dig or a, insult at any full-time influencers because I have tons of friends now who are full-time influencers and it is definitely a very, very difficult and draining job. Um, but I think in the light of COVID and being home, people were just kind of tired of the quote unquote day in my life as an influencer content and those type of
Sure.
influencers who, yes, they work hard. Yes, it's a lot of work, but also that lifestyle is not sustainable or realistic for 99% of people. And I think that era of almost glamorizing that, and which was fun and great, and I love being entertained. I think people just kind of were tired of that, and which is why slowly I think there's just been a more rise of influencers. And I know that term has had a negative connotation. I think only now it's slowly turning back positive again, but um, or just more everyday average people who just they just post like 30 times a day on TikTok and they just kind of build a brand around their personality. And we also see the doctor influencers and the nurses and
Yeah.
the lawyers and like these influencers who I think have such a great influence in the sense of they provide a more realistic lens into someone's life that isn't a full-time influencer 24/7. Like some of these doctors have they're full-on influencers and full-on doctors, and I think it's such a great way to inspire people that you can be an influencer without, again, there's nothing wrong with dropping out of high school or college, but like that's not sustainable or the best like advice that I would give someone who wants to be successful in any industry, because unfortunately for most people that's not realistic for them to drop out and pursue something that doesn't pay well a lot in the beginning or whatever it is. So I love that we've just been normalizing more working career people to share their life and motivate people to like, hey, like I can have a stable job and be an influencer and also financially be stable from two income streams or whatnot. So that's kind of why I started, and it's been really cool to share. And people have been really resonating with that. So I don't know if I'm necessarily a role model, but I am all for um, inspiring people to pursue more than just one thing and really make it their own and not be afraid to you know be an influencer but also work a 9 to 5 job as well.
Yeah, I definitely think, we're slowly seeing more people within the Gen Z age group do more things like kind of sharing their journey, even if they're not, the top of the line executive in a certain company. I think it's really cool. And like you said, it really inspires people in college or even in high school to look at that and really be encouraged to work hard, like you said. So I think that's awesome. And definitely a ton of kudos to you for that. Did you find on TikTok, was there a specific video that kind of helped kickstart your following, or was it kind of like a slew of videos that you started to post that you saw kind of a lot of traction come from?
Yeah, I started TikTok, I would say November of right before the pandemic for fun, just like kind of used it like Instagram and, whatever, whatnot. And none of my videos really took off. And I come from a dance background too. So the dances were fun to learn and all that stuff. But the first video of mine that really took off was my dancing video to Say So, talking about tips on how I got first round interviews at some top companies. And this is probably early January when TikTok was heavily pushing out content that was educational career content. I'm not sure if you guys kind of remember that era where it was like
Yes. Mhm.
heavy text on screen, heavy dancing. It was like tip after tip after tip. And I think they were really trying to pivot away from that quote unquote cringy lip syncing, branding that TikTok had been associated with. Then they wanted to be like, hey, TikTok could be a platform where you can get quick sound bites on how to buy real estate or money tips or how to get a job or college hacks. And so those are some of my first videos that really took off. And I think a lot of that was just being a first mover. I hate that phrase, but people always use it. A first mover in that space of college hacks, work from home tips, or how to get interviews here. And I'm dancing, so I'm helping the algorithm. And half the comments are making comments about the advice I've had. The other half the comments are being like, "Why is she dancing in the background?" But either way, it helped the algorithm. So
Mhm.
that's kind of what I did, and yeah, those were definitely the ones that did well. I did like I think I posted like 20 to 25 videos first before seeing my first viral one, which is not a lot. I understand now that it's so much more competitive and saturated, but I just tried a little bit of everything and I saw that I let the market decide like what they want to see from me.
Yeah, and I feel like November was like kind of the cusp. Like if you didn't get in before then or right in November, it's like it was very difficult to grow after that. So I
Hmm.
feel like you kind of tapped in right at the right time. But okay, you mentioned one of your top videos that kind of kicked you off was about landing interviews with top companies. So what was one of the tips that you shared within those videos?
I think it was honestly nothing that revolutionary, but I just put it on a short savable content. But number one, definitely having a good sticky resume. I think everybody thinks they have a good resume, but it's one of those. It's like how everyone thinks that they're good at public speaking, but
Hmm.
most people are not, and very few people, even very very talented public speakers, will often say, "I'm a good public speaker." So I see so many resumes, and a lot of them are just not good in the sense of they're not going to get through the system. And so many
Hmm.
companies these days, especially top companies, use software. And as much as people want to create a creative, artistic resume for these big top companies who are filtering through, you know, 10 to 15,000 applications at least in a month, right? Um, Unfortunately, you having a super unique, like artsy, fartsy resume isn't going to go through the system. It's not going to get read correctly, right? It's going to mess up the
Hmm.
formatting. And so, unless you're applying for, of course, the designer position or graphic design, you can always attach your portfolio elsewhere, right? But I always tell people have that kind of clean, I hate to say it, but boring resume template because it looks professional, it gets read, and you can always link portfolio and art samples later if that's really where you stand out. So that was one of the advice, and the second one was definitely network, getting referrals. A lot of these top companies, your resume, like unless you have big company names on there already or something like that, it is really hard to get picked up without just getting an auto rejection if you're lucky. But then most times you'll just get ghosted. So getting a referral from somebody at the company at least guarantees that somebody is going to look at your application with real eyeballs. So that definitely helps your chances a lot. And definitely that depends on how much certain companies really weigh referrals more than others, but it definitely can't hurt either way. So that was another tip. Um, and I think the last one was using university recruiting resources because I was talking about college students. So I think a lot of people like to ignore university uh, career pages, but a lot of times those jobs are listed through the university. So you do have like an expedited or separate track of where your resume gets to be shown, and whether that's a platform like Handshake or specific university pages. If you see job listings there, your application will be prioritized if you are a student at that university. So definitely recommending people use their internal career sites as well.
Yeah, those are tips actually. And I actually had a question too about the interview process at Google and some of these top companies that you were able to land interviews at. We know a lot of our listeners are kind of at that point of looking for their first job or taking a next step in their career. So what's kind of the application process that you're seeing a lot for working in marketing, working in tech marketing specifically?
Yeah, I can't say too much about the interview process because mine was so unique to a full-time conversion. But I will say that, you know, I think again, this is like the resume and the public speaking thing. People always like to say, I'm so good at the behaviorals when I think behaviorals are very tough in the sense of, you can't ramble. You have to get all the details. You have to be concise, but then you have to show personality and you want to have different case scenarios. And so, but then you also don't want to sound too rehearsed. So I think a lot of people neglect behaviorals because they think they could just wing it. Like how many people I've heard it so many times, like, oh, I'm not too worried about the behaviorals. I'm not even going to practice. And then when I ask them to even do a little tell me about yourself, they stumble or they rant. It takes them 3 minutes. So definitely practice your behaviorals, and it should sound natural, but also be concise and straight to the point. And of course, practicing the technicals is a no brainer, but I definitely think the behaviorals are one of those things people think that they're all good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's honestly, I've I've seen and heard the same thing. So totally right there with
About
you.
behaviorals?
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. What has been your favorite part of starting your career, and what do you kind of hope to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's totally okay if you don't know, but if you do know, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I just started. I'm 5 weeks in, and I've been telling this to people, and don't quote me, never say never, but I, personally don't see a future where I'm not working in corporate, right? And I plan to continue to make content and share my life, but I personally have been so fulfilled and happy working at a company that I love on a team that's really great and where I could bring my skills as an influencer and that knowledge to a tech company or any company. And it's been really, really cool to see that. And maybe one day, my social media, what is it, outgrows my career life. But, I think even when that day comes, I think I would want to, join a different tech company or start my own business and like use my knowledge I have from working at different companies because um, I think that is so much more value. I think I could bring so much more value to audiences if I'm working and building something and being in industry. And I feel like if I lose that, then there's only so much I can offer because I wouldn't be constantly learning as somebody in industry. Of course, I'd be learning as like an influencer and content creator, but especially with my degree and also things that I'm passionate about and I've been trained in, I think that I could be of most value if I am also working.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'm curious too to see, as we continue to see people like you that are sharing kind of their corporate experience on social, I'm curious if brands will start to almost incentivize people like you to almost act as a brand ambassador as you are working within the company, because I feel like it might almost to turn into almost a recruiting tool in a way. Like
Yeah.
you can kind of talk about the brand and help encourage people, to apply if there's certain jobs open within kind of the department that you're in. So I'm curious to see as like brands see this happening more and more, because I'm certainly seeing with several different, corporate companies this happening. And I think it's really interesting and people love it. So I'm curious to see how those brands will use that to their advantage. And I totally get what you're saying about, never wanting to leave the corporate world. I work for myself, but I kind of fantasize about the idea of getting into a big corporate company and like climbing the ladder per se and kind of having that challenge. I think that's something that people that own their own business don't really get to experience. And it's something
Right.
that's kind of fun in a way. Obviously, I'm not going to do it just for the fun of it, but it's kind of a good challenge to see what you can do, what you can learn from people, because owning your business, a lot of time it's just you or in a few people and you don't have people pouring into you a lot of times. So it's kind of a fun opportunity to be in corporate, even though owning your own business is really glamorized a lot of times too. So anyways, I love that you talked about that. But this is one question that we are dying to ask you. So, overall, what is it like working for Google and YouTube? Are you working from home currently, or are you going into the office? And what does kind of your day to day look like right now?
Yeah, so far I've been really enjoying it, and I think this is really, you could work for your dream company or any company, but I think it really does depend on the manager you have and the team you have, and I've had such a positive experience. Right now I am working from home, but Google has slowly opened up their offices. I believe it's like voluntary, don't quote me on that, but I have been able to visit some offices. Last week I was in the Bay Area for a work social and just visiting some of my Berkeley friends, and I got to go into the office for like 4 days out of the week, and that was so much fun, and that was amazing. And I know a lot of people probably who've been working in industry are like, I want to be work from home forever, but for someone who did college for like a year and a half at home and an internship at home, like I was just so excited to go in office. And it was just also so much better for my mental health when I was moving around and doing stuff. And I felt like um, just a better work-life balance. So far it's been really great, and everyone has been so nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the content that I think you made some content while you were at the Google
Mm-hmm.
offices. I loved that. And I'm all about the snacks too. I know there's like
I know.
a huge like pantry there or cafeteria. So definitely jealous of that. And how do you come up with, some of your content ideas around, working from home? Because it can kind of get boring, doing the same routine day in and day out. So what are some ways that you come up with? What are some of your best tips for people working at home to kind of make sure they're not getting into a rut?
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing this with my social media manager the other day because I was kind of going through a transition rut as well because I'd graduated, but then I hadn't started my work yet. And I was like, well, I don't want to talk about this and I can't really talk too much about that. And I was feeling a little bit in that rut space and I was still living at home. And I'm not in I can't do apartment series because I haven't moved to a new apartment yet. So I totally resonate and empathize with that. And I've just been building out, content in terms of what I could do with work from home, whether it's fashion or like mini morning routines. And I think I, for a long time, was such a perfectionist in the sense of because I was on early TikTok. I was on TikTok when every single one of my TikToks were like blowing up 250K, 300K, 400K. But then now, because there's so many more people on the app, and overall, I think everybody kind of has less views than they did at their prime. And which doesn't mean what I'm making is any worse or better. So just learning to separate myself from the views. And I'm still on TikTok quite small compared to a lot of the large creators. Or my social media manager hates when I say I'm a small creator. I am a niche creator. Okay. She's like, you're not small, you're niche. Um, so yeah, like even as a niche creator, she was telling me that it's too early for me to be stressing about views, and that if the views are becoming a problem, she'll let me know. But I think I used to post and then I would delete videos all the time because they didn't quote unquote blow up on the rate that I could predict it would blow up. So then I was like, I don't want it on my feed because it's gonna look like I have blah blah. But now I've just been posting more and just not taking it down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that brings up another question that I had is you mentioned that you have a social media manager. So at what point did you recognize, hey, I might need somebody to help me out here managing my full-time job or even the interview process into your full-time job, and then also a whole calendar of social media content? When did you kind of realize, and how did you take that step of hiring someone to help you out?
Yeah, so I really took that step. I would say wrapping up my senior year in college, the brands were getting bigger, the deals were getting bigger, and I was just wanting to be more efficient with my time, and also I was getting extremely high anxiety, negotiating with brands, and then waking up, and it's kind of like not gambling, but it's like going to Vegas, right? You wake up and then you refresh your email, and you're like, "Am I going to get a hit? Like, am I going to get branding? Like, it was such a negative thing for me." So that was, the workflow was getting heavier, and also just for my mental health, I was like, okay, it's probably just better if someone else handles this. And so yeah, I had some friends who was working with this manager, and we talked, and it was a great fit. And so that's kind of how I found her, and she's been really great and been taking a lot of stress off of my, you know it's not living rent free in my head anymore.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, we are reaching our last question here. We love to ask this question on Marketing Happy Hour, but I think I'm going to rephrase it a little bit because it's usually you know now that you wish you knew when you started your career. But according to everything that you've shared with us, you started your career about 5 weeks ago, not including your internship
Yes.
you did in college. But is there anything or like one major tip that you'd give somebody starting out their career that you haven't shared yet?
Yeah, I mean, of course, depends on the culture of where you work, but this sounds really cheesy, but just be confident because I think a lot of people are listening to Gen Z right now, and a lot of people are listening,
Yes.
especially I don't know, someone might cancel me for saying this word, but a lot of boomers are listening to Gen Z, right? I heard boomers are sensitive to the word boomers, which
Oh,
I'm
really?
not, yeah, it's not I guess the phrase okay boomer, like some
Oh,
workplace
yeah,
called
I
it
guess.
offensive, but
Oh no.
the all the generations that are not Gen Z are listening, including millennials, are
Yeah.
listening a lot to Gen Z right now. And, whether it's in meetings or whether it's marketing or business or sales or whatever, especially in marketing, though, people are listening to Gen Z and they value your input because they're paying lots of money to all these digital marketing agencies to give them a brief on Gen Z, and that presentation and deck is 3 months old, and so you offer so much value than you think, and be confident and share your insights, and of course always back it with data and solutions, and be supportive, not just critical. But yeah, I think just being confident in that right now it is a great time to be a young mind in corporate America, because there's a lot of people looking at young minds for everything. So I think it's, yeah, just be confident.
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. We were actually talking about this in our first episode of this season with Allie from Upwork. She was talking about empathy in the workplace, and we kind of got into like the purchasing power and the preferences of Gen Z and how they're kind of leaning more towards the authentic self, and kind of like, brands that are really putting, their authenticity out there and their empathetic side actually out there. And that's, a shift from what we've seen in the past. So that's really interesting that you're keen to that, and like recommending that people, address things with confidence. They are the generation that people are looking to for that kind of stuff. That's super, super interesting. So Angelica, we are done with the episode here. Where do you find you on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn? If you're on there, where can people find you?
Yeah, everyone can find me at _ Angelica Song, ANGELICA SONG, on Instagram and TikTok. And on YouTube, it is just Angelica Song. And I'll be posting more on my YouTube channel because, probably looks good for the bosses as well.
Sure.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Angelica. We appreciate you coming on again. We know you are busy. We're so excited to see your career continue to evolve and just follow you on TikTok and see all the amazing content that you post. So thank you so much again.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited you guys are doing this. And what a great resource for a lot of young people starting their jobs. So I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Have a great night.
I loved learning more about Angelica's unique career path, especially diving into what the future of work can look like for generations moving forward, and how showing up authentically through your employees can really humanize your brand. It reminds me of our episode with Allie Golden of Upwork, where we chatted about empathy in the workplace and how that can really impact a company. Definitely go listen to that episode if you haven't yet. But if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate and leave a review. And as always, keep up with us on Instagram at Marketing Happy Hour. That's at Marketing Happy HR.